What would the world be like if sex wasn't pleasurable? Well, assuming it's not displeasurable, sex would be more of a business transaction. It already is for some people. Yeah, ops mom. It's not a business if you do it for free. We were talking about ops and not your mom. Medic. In Mass Effect, there's a race called the Solarians. They're like salamander humanoids crossed with the classic Area 51 aesthetic from a creature design perspective. A Solarian character explicitly says they don't have sex drives the way humans do. Another Solarian has a quest where you have to find the genetic history of his family. Without it, he says, his family will be disadvantaged when it comes to negotiating mating contracts. Based on this, it always seemed to me like the Solarians viewed reproduction like a business deal that was an essential part of their society's continuation. Basically, that was my long-winded way of saying it would suck. Where's that scientist Solarian bot when you need it? I'm the very model of a scientist Solarian. I've studied species Turian, Assyrian Batarian. I'm quite good at genetics as a subset of biology, because I'm an expert which I know is a tautology. My Xenocian studies range from urban to agrarian. I'm the very model of a scientist Solarian, not a bot, but I hope it helped. We would probably all be drug addicts. Fat drug addicts. Joke's on you, I already am that. Well, the internet would be completely different. Internet would have a much slower development maybe, cause there would be no porn. At least half of the internet will be gone then. Human breeding farms. Sex would be a job. Also, I guarantee someone, somewhere would still find it pleasurable. Liking sex would be its own fetish. You mean you actually like sticking that in there? What's the next most pleasurable thing humans experience? Food? Drugs? Exercise? Massages? I'm not sure, but replace our obsession with sex with an obsession with something else. Mayo, I'm imagining every song ever sung about sex just being about that sweet, sweet bag of chips that got away. This is the universe I'd rather live in. Overpopulation would be no more. Population would be no more. Hold on, let me go ask my wife. r/Suicide Woods. People wouldn't have kids unintentionally. Relationships would be more stable as there wouldn't be a honeymoon phase. Practically every child would be a planned decision by the parents. Far fewer children in poverty/low income homes, statistically leading to lower crime rates in those areas. There would be social pressure/obligation to have kids, so the population stays net positive. If we are saying sex wasn't ever pleasurable, I doubt the human race would exist. Why wouldn't there be a honeymoon phase? The whole point of that phase is just that things are new, so the dopamine rush is higher and eventually desensitizes. Some people are in relationships primarily for the sex, I guess. We would be extinct 35,000 years ago. Probably never would have left the cave to begin with. Shut up, Plato. A giant never-ending wormlet. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 255,642 aboard the Axiom. As always, the weather is a balmy 72 degrees and sunny, and, oh, I see the ship's log is showing that today is the 700th anniversary of our 5-year cruise. Well, I'm sure our forefathers would be proud to know that 700 years later we'd be doing the exact same thing they were doing. So, be sure next mealtime to ask for your free septuacentennial cupcake in a cup. Wow, look at that. Bonus points if you know the movie and why that's relevant to the above. You know, in Wall-E there is nothing to suggest that sex isn't pleasurable or no longer an urge. With all the automation on that ship, I'd have to assume that there are robots on there with some serious SUCC and FUCC. Thank you for attending my TED Talk. You mean SUCCE and FUCCE? $10. It would be fucked. Actually, the world would be a lot less fucked. Not as much sex. No need for abortions. Marriage probably would just remain economic. Porn wouldn't exist. And the population would be in the tens of millions, rather than the billions. Abortions would still exist. They'd just be reduced. Don't forget that a lot of women can suffer complications during pregnancy that can be life-threatening for either herself or the baby without terminating. sheep in Wales would be left in peace. Got him. For me, marginally better. I wouldn't feel like I'm missing out on anything. Oof. Same. I don't think we'd have to worry about sexual assault as much. Well, it would certainly prove once and for all that rape is about power and not sex, I suppose. With very few people or no people at all. At first I wanted to disagree, but if I'm not mistaken humans were on the verge of extinction at some point, you maybe have a very valid point. I mean, sex isn't pleasurable for me, and my life is the same. Lol, right. I'd be happier in the hypothetical world, cause I wouldn't have to engage in it anymore to please a partner. TBH, yeah. What makes it unpleasant? Doesn't feel good. Mostly doesn't feel like anything. Sometimes it hurts. Love couples would actually love each other. Don't they already? Good sex is just a perk. Or maybe it is a curse. I'm crying now. It's okay buddy, I've been there. Wait, it's supposed to be pleasurable? Oh, did I spot a fellow asexual here? My people. Empty, or sparsely populated. TLDR, probably lost in the current of comments. Coming from the perspective of an asexual, I've seen some of my very sexually driven friends spend a lot of time and money on dates and the art of wooing just to get that few minutes of relief. Honestly, that honestly sounds horrible to me. Not saying what they're doing is bad though. Based off of my experience, I think the biggest advantage is to sex being unpleasant, or being ace is all the extra time. In the time spent on evenings not going out, or chatting up strangers on the internet I've taught myself to sew, studied 2 years of Japanese, got in shape, and developed a deeper self-love that literally makes me a better person in every aspect of my life. I also think that teen pregnancies, rape, and violent crimes against women would go down significantly if the appeal of sex wasn't there. Ironically, the things you've done instead of learning how to woo others into bed are probably more effective than the negging and misogyny many people practice in attempt to get laid. God, who would have thought that not being a dick to the person you want to fuck might make them want to fuck you more? Some religions would be more popular, since sex would actually be just for breeding. Society could be better for women though, since lust wouldn't force them into the role of desirable conquest. People still have children on purpose, even though I've heard giving birth isn't all that fun. So maybe we wouldn't go extinct. Only maybe. A lot less rappy. Our species probably wouldn't be at a point where we can ask questions over the internet. We probably wouldn't even be hunter-gatherers. Just by natural selection, evolution. If you find sex pleasurable you have an increased urge to reproduce more, and you will have more offspring, who then inherit the genes that made the parents want to reproduce more. Over time that genetic makeup will become dominant as this tray outnumbers the trays that didn't value sex, that therefore didn't get passed down and disappeared. Obviously at some stage in our evolution a group of sapiens happened to have a random genetic quirk that made sex pleasurable. Without that, I doubt population would have reached a stage where there were so many of us that we became the social animals we are today. Being in a social group requires more brain power. In a group of 20 you need to know where person 2 got his breakfast. Did person 6 have an argument with person 11? Is person 8 still into person 3? People with an inability to notice these cues had smaller brains and died out. The bigger brains passed on their intelligence to future generations. To expand on this, if humans didn't have pleasurable sex, they would have some other drive to reproduce, such as heat or rut. For a species to survive, they have to reproduce, so something would have to drive the desire for the reproductive act. No animals, only plants. If it had never been pleasurable, and we are just talking about Homo sapiens, then it's unlikely the species would have survived and thrived as it has. Our frontal cortex wouldn't have been able to develop beyond instinct or physiological drivers if it were to stop being pleasurable. Something like Brave New World in developed nations, and The Handmaid's Tale in undeveloped nations. Taxes would be paid by X amount of sex. They already do. Child tax credits. The more kids you have, dependents, the less taxes one has to pay. At least here in the US. Honestly, This might be controversial to say, but I think men would probably treat women worse than they do now. The desire for sex is really an important balancing mechanism between genders. I say men treat women worse, and not the other way around, although that could be true too because men already have the natural physicality part over women. You take away the desire for sex and I think men as a whole would lose their incentive to treat women equally. Now I know there are men that are asexual or gay, and they are not complete dicks to women. But my guess is that's because society already has set that standard as a social norm. I think that standard would not exist without the desire for sex from the masses and things would just be shit. Pursuit of sex may have a lot to do with the present state of our gender dimorphism. We ultimately might look like a very different species and women could have better physical prowess. I'm not a biologist, but stronger male/weaker female is not the default in lots of species.